Hi, my name is Reet. For our bedtime story tonight, I'm going to tell you about a really brave dog named Balto. If you'd like to try one of my freshly baked cookies, visit sweetsbyreets.com. Sweet dreams! In the winter of 1925, in a town called Nome on the edge of Alaska, the snow never seemed to stop falling. Nome sat at the very edge of Alaska, where the cold Bering Sea met miles and miles of frozen wilderness. In the winter, it was not reachable by boat or by plane. The sea was frozen over and it was too windy for planes. The town was very isolated from the rest of Alaska. But that winter, something terrible began to spread through Nome. A sickness called diphtheria, a dangerous infection of the throat, had arrived, and it was spreading fast. Children were the most vulnerable. Families were frightened. The town's doctor, a very experienced man named Curtis Welch, knew that without medicine, a special medicine called antitoxin, some of the children would die. The antitoxin existed, but it was very far away. It was sitting in a hospital in Anchorage, Alaska, which was nearly 1,000 miles away from Nome. How could anyone get to Nome in the middle of January when the sea was frozen solid and blizzards made flying nearly impossible? The answer was unexpected. It came from an old and trusted tradition: the sled dogs and the mushers. What is a musher? A musher is a person who drives a dog sled. The word comes from the French command marche, meaning go or move, which early explorers in North America would shout to their sled dogs. Over time, that command got shortened and turned into mush, and the person giving that command became known as a musher. Each team of mushers and sled dogs would run their stretch of the trail, then hand the precious cargo to the next. Together, they would cover the distance that no single team could manage alone. It was a very dangerous trip to make, but it was the only way to get the medicine to Nome. The antitoxin was packaged carefully and wrapped in insulating materials to keep it from freezing in the brutal cold. Then the relay began. One by one, teams set out into the storm. The temperature dropped to 50 below zero in some stretches, and then when they reached the next team, they would hand off the medicine. The wind howled across the open tundra. Ice formed on the dog's face. The mushers lost feeling in their fingers and toes. Among all the dog teams in that relay, one dog would get his own statue in Central Park. His name was Balto. Balto was a Siberian husky with a black and white coat and calm, dark eyes. He was owned and trained by a Norwegian musher named Gunnar Kassan. Kassan and Balto's team were assigned one of the final stretches of the relay, a long run from a checkpoint called Bluff into Nome itself. As Kassan prepared his team, the storm got worse. There was no visibility, and the wind was throwing ice into the faces of the dogs. Kassan could barely see his hand in front of his face, let alone the trail beneath the sled. There were 7 dogs pulling the sled, and Balto's place was in the very front. He was the leader. It was his job to find the trail when there was no trail to see. Good thing Balto had instinct, confidence, and an almost supernatural sense of direction. If a dog panicked in these conditions, he could go off course and put the whole team in danger. It was really hard to see, so if a team got lost, they might not find their way back. But Balto was very smart and very brave. He lowered his head into the wind and he ran. It was so cold, and the wind and the ice were in his eyes. It felt like he had been running forever, but Balto didn't stop. At one terrifying moment, the sled hit a patch of ice and tipped over, spilling into a frozen river. Kassan scrambled in the dark to right the sled and locate the package of antitoxin, feeling desperately through the snow with bare hands until he found it. He repackaged it, climbed back onto the sled, and gave the command to go. Balto went. In the early hours of February 2nd, 1925, Gunner Kassan and Balto's team arrived in Nome. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. The town was dark and silent, most of its residents asleep, unaware that a brave man and a hero with 4 paws had arrived to their rescue. Kassan climbed off the sled, walked to the front of his team, knelt down in the snow, and put his face against Balto's fur. He later said he was too overcome to speak. The antitoxin was rushed to Dr. Welch. He administered it quickly and the outbreak was stopped. The children of Nome were able to take the medicine and recover from their sickness. Word of the relay spread across the country, and then across the world. Newspapers carried the story. People who had never heard of Nome, Alaska, suddenly knew its name. And among all the heroes of that relay, and there were many, human and canine alike, Balto captured the public's heart. Within the year, a bronze statue of Balto was erected in Central Park in New York City. It stands there to this day. The base of the statue reads, "Dedicated to the indomitable spirit of the sled dogs that relayed antitoxin 600 miles over rough ice, across treacherous waters, through Arctic blizzards, from Nenana to the relief of stricken Nome in the winter of 1925. Endurance, fidelity, intelligence." Balto lived out the rest of his life as a celebrity husky in a zoo in Cleveland, Ohio. He was loved and visited by thousands of people who came to see just him. He lived to be 14 years old. And every year when the snow falls in Alaska, the story is remembered. Not just Balto's story, but the story of 20 mushers and hundreds of dogs who chose to keep going through conditions that tested every limit they had. Nome needed them, and they answered. The end.